Morning, everybody. My name is Niamh Phelan, and I work for IQ Content, a usability and design company based in Dublin. And I'm delighted to be here today talking about my favourite subject, web analytics. So we'll start with the Web Analytics Association definition, which is web analytics is the practice of measuring, collecting, analysing and reporting on internet data to understand how a site is used and how to optimise its usage. But really what it's all about is the money. So your website will, and web analytics will make you money by helping you sell more stuff or generate more leads. It can save you money by driving self-service online. So if you're, let's say, an insurance company and you need to distribute claims forms, if you can drive your customers to download those claims forms online, essentially you're saving the cost of somebody in the call centre answering that call, printing the claims form and sending it out. Your website can also enhance your brand, which is slightly less measurable, but there are some measurements we can put in around that. But essentially, web analytics will allow you to calculate a return on investment for any money that you spend on your site. So we're in the middle of the biggest recession that the world has ever seen, so you can't be going around spending money and not knowing if that money is well spent. So it's absolutely critical to measure these things. So the process starts with setting goals. That's absolutely critical. You need to have very specific business objectives, and you need to translate those business objectives into measurable goals on your website. Then you need to put a process and measurement in place, and then you need to put some reporting system in place. So you'll come up with a report template, and on a monthly basis that will be distributed. And then a separate activity to reporting is analysis. So if you have, you might have a full team of web analysts, but possibly you'll only be able to dedicate a half a day a month to this. So basically all you get time to do is pull your report in an hour and then spend a few hours trying to analyse peaks and troughs and trying to figure out why those have come about. And then you can optimise your site accordingly. So as regards setting the business objectives, I know everyone has a vague business objectives of sell more stuff, but you really need to get more specific than that. So you could have something like sell more hard drives to students, or generate more leads from Scotland. So specific business objectives are very important. So as consultants, we can facilitate workshops whereby you will come up with your specific business objectives, and it basically involves interviewing the stakeholders, bringing them together, analysing the results of the workshops, and then coming up with definitive goals. And another advantage of going through this process is that you build consensus within the organisation and you're all working towards the same goals. So this is a colleague of mine facilitating a business objective workshop. So we basically get people to write down what they see as the goals of the website on post-its. We call them out, we stick them up on a whiteboard. The ones that come up again and again are the critical business objectives, and then we work on translating those business objectives into measurable goals on the website. And if you have a business objective that doesn't have some content on the website that you can measure around that, then obviously there's some content missing from your website. So now that you've gone through the process of setting up of defining your goals, you need to put a process of measurement in place. And today we're talking about Google Analytics, and I am a Google Analytics authorised consultant, but I have other certifications as well. But genuinely, this is the best tool for you to get started with. It's well priced, it's free, and it's very easy to deploy, get up and running, very usable. So I would highly recommend you start with this. So you basically just go to google.com/analytics. You click that sign up now button there, and you have to just give some very basic information about your site, the URL of your site, and your location, your name, and that's about it really. Click continue there, and Google will give you what's called your tracking code. So that's that code there, tagged as number 2. Paste this code onto your site. Now if you look under the number 1 column, you'll see that there's actually a few variations of the tracking code. The first one is if you're tracking a site that's purely just mysite.com. There's no subdomains, there's no alternative domains. I'd recommend that you always use the second tracking code, which is for sites with a single domain and subdomains. And even if you don't have subdomains on your site at this time, there's no harm in using that tracking code, and it'll future-proof your site. So I would say always select the middle radio button there. There is a third option there for tracking multiple domains. I would recommend that you seriously consider and get some advice before you go into an implementation like that, because there needs to be some very good reasons to track more than one website in a single Google Analytics account, and there's complexity there around cookie integrity and that kind of thing when you've got multiple domains. So we won't talk about that today. 90% of the time this second tracking code will be sufficient. So now you have your tracking code and you need to copy and paste it onto every page of your site. So here it is on our own site, and it goes immediately before the closing body tag. And it will work in other locations, but that's the best place to put it. It won't delay your page, and you won't actually get a page view log to Google Analytics unless the full page is loaded. So that's the best place to put it. Presumably you'll have a footer on your site and you only need to paste it once, and the code will be inherited across the whole site. And it's critical that it goes onto every page. If you leave off some pages, it will look to Google Analytics like somebody has left your site, and that will pollute some of your statistics. So there it is. There's not too much to note about the tracking code. Just basically the things of interest is there is the tracking code calling further code from the Google servers, ga.js. Here is your own unique account ID. So you should have a totally different account ID for every website that you're tracking. And I'll say that because 90% of the time that's the way it should be. And then you just set domain name to example.com or whatever, and that's the bit that looks after subdomains, and there's no harm in doing that all the time. So now you've set up your account, you've tagged your site, and you go to google.com/analytics and you log in. And when you log in first, you'll probably have 0 visits because Google Analytics will be 3 hours, 4 hours behind, sometimes up to 24 hours behind. So you're going to have to wait a few days to start to, or a day anyway, to start to see good data that you can do some analysis on. Now, I'm not going to do loads of definitions today, we're just going to do 2, but we're going to really understand what they mean. So the first one is a visit, and a visit starts when somebody loads a page on your website and the tracking code is executed. A visit ends 3 ways. Either somebody hits the X and closes the browser, they follow a link off your site to another website, or they type a new URL into the address bar. But the visit doesn't actually end with any of those things. It ends 30 minutes later. So if somebody is on your site, navigates off to another site, maybe your competitor's site, if they're back within the 30 minutes, it's still the same visit. So that's an important metric, and it's an accurate metric, and that's why I'm going to talk about that today more than visitors, which has issues around people deleting their cookies and one-to-one mappings between people and browsers and that kind of thing. So visits, it's accurate, it's intuitive. The other one I want to talk about is bounce rates. So you've got a bounce rate for your site, which is of all the visits to your site, how many were single page visits, what percentage. So that gives you an indication of how sticky your site is. You also have the bounce rate of a page, which is of all visits to that page, how many were single page visits. So that's an important metric as well. And what it tells you about is how your site is performing as a landing tool. It doesn't actually tell you how a page or the site is performing in a multi-page visit. It's got nothing to do with them. All it's talking about is single page visits. So now that we know our basic definitions, when you log into Google first, you get brought to the dashboard. So the top right drop down there is the account drop down. So if you're only tracking one site, you'll only have one entry in there. But if you're an agency with a lot of websites on your books, you want to see a different entry for every site in that account drop down. Now, what commonly happens is people, well, not commonly, but it's a bad approach, and I have seen it. An agency will set up one account and set up all their clients and sub-accounts, and then the client can never really get full ownership of that data. You can never give a client admin access to their data without them seeing all the other sub-accounts you have set up as well. So that's critical, new account for every client. And then the top left drop-down is a profile drop-down. Now, you've just set up Google Analytics, so you only have one profile by default, and that profile tracks all information about all visits to all parts of your site. Later on, we'll talk about setting up different profiles to track just discrete visits from a discrete audience or a discrete part of the site. And then in the left nav, you've got the major sections of reports. So the ones we'll be talking about today, you've got your dashboard there, that's configurable. Visitors is anything to do with your visitors, what country they're in, what kind of technology they're using. Traffic sources, where people came from when they view your site. Content is what they actually looked at on the site. Goals, you'll need to set up some goals for your site that are tied to your business objectives. By default in Google Analytics, all pages are equal, and you need to let Google Analytics know they're not all equal. The thank you for purchasing page is a critical page that we want to put special tracking on. And then e-commerce reporting around what products were bought and what categories of products and that kind of thing. So this is our own website for April that we're looking at there, and you see it's very structured. It goes down on a Saturday and Sunday, and it's busy during the week. Early in April there we have Holy Thursday, Good Friday, which weren't as busy. And that's your dashboard. Just another sample report here is the map overlay report, which everyone likes because it's very visual, and we can see we got 2 visits from Kazakhstan, which is always interesting. So you just scan down through your the top 10 countries that sent visits to you, and I'd be looking at the countries and I'd be looking at the bounce rate over here. Now our bounce rate is very high, it's 70%, and people are always asking me what's a good bounce rate, what's a bad bounce rate, and I avoid answering that question. We have a blog on our site, and one of my colleagues blogged about the usability of the kitchen sink, and some people put a basin in the kitchen sink and some people don't, and so people Google kitchen sink and they land on our site, and obviously they're gone straight away. It's not what they're interested in. So I'm not overly concerned about that. I'm not going to actively try to prevent those visits coming to the site, but I will try to bring my bounce rate down. But I wouldn't, invest too much time in that, because some people might say, oh, you want to have a bounce rate less than 25%. I wouldn't go down that road at all. It is what it is, and try to bring it down and try to understand why it is the way it is. A Contact Us page will have a high bounce rate because people will Google your company contact, they'll land on to Contact Us, they'll get what they want and they'll be gone straight away, and that's fine. The next report here is the Visitor Trending Visits report, and just to illustrate one of the controls to you there, by default you'll have the daily data points selected there. You can also select hourly data points, so you'll see what time of the day your site is busiest. So we're busiest around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The traffic source report, also very important. So you've got direct traffic, people who type your URL or follow a bookmark, and direct, actually, if Google Analytics doesn't know where a visit came from and has no other bucket to put it in, it'll put it into direct. So it's kind of a catch-all. Referring sites, very important. You do want traffic from referring sites. Inbound links, Google Juice, very important. And then traffic from search engines as well. And then you can't get much more information about direct traffic really, but you can get full listings of all the sites that send traffic to your site, and you can look at the bounce rates and various other metrics associated with those sites. And let's say you see a high bounce rate coming from a certain site, you know you're not meeting the expectations of people who followed that link. So you might look at asking that site to change that link, tailor a landing page to the traffic to meet their expectations, and hopefully you'll engage more of them. And for search engines, you get a full list of all the keywords now. By default, you get all the organic keywords, people clicking on your paid ads. We just need to do a little bit more work in order to get a breakdown of the keywords from them. So back to this is your analytics settings screen, and basically in Google Analytics you've got one report, you've got all your report screens, and then you've got 2 other important screens, which is the analytics settings screen and the profile settings screen. So by default here on the analytics settings screen, you're after getting one profile by default, and you might want to add more profiles, because mixed in here will be your own staff traffic on the site, and maybe if you only deliver to the UK, maybe you only want to catch UK traffic, so you need to set up a profile that's just for your target audience. Before we get to that, we need to talk a little bit about regular expressions. So people think these are voodoo. They're not voodoo. We're only going to learn 5 of them, and that'll be enough to do basically everything you need to do. So they're like the universal translator of data. So these are the 5 important ones. So you've got that caret symbol, which means begins with. You've got $, which means ends with. You've got pipe, which means or, so A or B. You've got the slash, which will escape a special character. So let's say you genuinely want dollar to mean dollar and not ends with, then you need to escape the dollar symbol. And then dot star is catches every character, every number. So if I wanted to express United Kingdom or Ireland as a regular expression, I could do caret United Kingdom, dollar, pipe, caret Ireland, dollar. And I'll just do one more example so it's that we're all following, because it is a little bit unintuitive. If I wanted to express an IP address range as a regular expression, which I might want to do, it's something you do commonly because you'll want to exclude your own staff traffic based on their IP address. So basically, to express that whole IP address range, I'll say caret 63, I have to escape all my full stops. If you don't escape your full stops, Google Analytics won't recognise that that's a full stop in an IP address. So you really need to do that, and then finish with dot star, because that's the entire IP address range. So when I want to set up a new profile, I click the Add New Profile link there highlighted. And just to make the distinction, I mentioned it already, between adding a new profile and creating a new account or sub-account. It's a profile you want to do that will track a segment of traffic or a segment of a site on a single domain. So when you click Add New Profile, you get the option to add a profile for a new domain. Now, as I said, multiple domain tracking is quite complex, and we're not going to talk about that today. There's a blog post on our site about it if you Google IQ content cross-domain tracking. I have a script there that simplifies the whole thing, but for today we're only going to talk about tracking one domain. And you just need to give your domain a name, so I'm going to say external traffic in Ireland, and the apply cost data there, tick boxes, it's related to tracking your AdWords, so I would say always check that, and I'll explain to you later why that's important. So now you've set up your new profile, but you haven't, at the moment, it's still collecting all information about all visits to your site, and you haven't done any configuration on the profile at all. So first of all, we edit the profile, and you need to put a few settings in place. So you'll already have the profile name and website URL from when you set it up. The default page, you know the way you might have, you'll always have your home page at the root, and you might have an alternative home page at index.html. Now, you want to tell Google Analytics they're actually the same page, otherwise you'll always have two line items in your reports, and you'll have to add them together in your head, and it's not ideal. So you set your default page to whatever the alternative name for your home page is. It's worth getting the time zone right, because that's how they do the time of day reports. Again, click Apply Cost Data. Now, around excluding URL query parameters, you might have a form submission, and when the form submits, it might submit to a page like thankyou.html, and then as a query parameter it might have ampersand email equals the email address that's just signed up to your newsletter. Now, you don't want any personally identifiable information getting to Google Analytics, because that is it's against the terms of service, and it's not legal because it's data that lives on external servers. So if there's anything personally identifiable that shows up in an address bar anywhere on your site, you need to exclude that using the exclude URL query parameter. So that could be a phone number, it could be a name, it could be an email address commonly. E-commerce website, even if you don't have e-commerce, click yes, it can't do any harm, and you set your currency. Now, as regards tracking site search, just to make the distinction here, you've got the keywords that people put into search engines to get to your site, but then you've also got the search terms that people will put into an internal site search box on your site. So in order to track what people are putting into the internal site search box, which is very important because that's gold dust, that's looking straight into your visitors' minds, and it will show you where there's gaps in your content. You need the query parameter you need the search term to be posted as a query parameter in the URL. So your developers can arrange that for you, and it's a small amount of work. So then when somebody gets to the search results page, they'll get to something like search results.html, Q equals the search term. And whatever they've put as that parameter, Q in this case, you need to put in to tell Google Analytics every time you see a query parameter Q coming in, that's an internal site search term. Most people don't use categories, so you can just put no there, but it's similar. You can post the category as a query parameter and just enter the query parameter there. So you've edited your profile. Now, you've got a clean profile set up with nice settings on it, but it's still collecting all information about all visits. So you need to add a filter. So you do that. It's highlighted there where to add a filter. And this is where we start to use our regular expressions. Now, there's a number of predefined filters there, so you could exclude based on IP address using a predefined filter, but we're going to actually do custom filters today, because then you'll understand them and how to use your regular expressions, and the predefined filters kind of baby stuff. So we'll always use our regular expressions and custom filters. So it's an exclude filter, because what we want to do is exclude all our own staff traffic. And then there's a drop down there where you can select what you want to exclude on. Now, there are all the various things that you can exclude visits based on or include visits based on. Request URI means the page, the URL. So if every page in your shop begins with example.com/shop, then you could create a filter on request URI that includes begins with /shop .star followed by anything, and then you would have a profile that just tracks your shop. But today we're going to do just exclude your staff traffic. So you select visitor IP address, I think it is, from that drop down, and you put in your regular expression IP address. So now you have excluded staff traffic from your profile. Now, I'll just briefly cover the architecture now. So you've got a web page that lives on a web server, and you put the tracking code onto the web page. And when the page is executed, first of all, they call a little bit of extra code from Google servers, and then it sends back information to Google servers about the visit. And then that goes through a number of filters and is stored down in your various profiles. And then you can log into Google Analytics and look at reports based on these profiles. Now, if you're used to Oracle tables and that kind of thing, and having different views on the data, then it's a different paradigm. There's actually separate data pools for all your profiles. So next we're going to talk about setting up your goals. So you start at the top of the funnel, and you'll have a lot of visits to your website, but only a small amount of them will actually achieve one of your goals. So there's dropouts all along the way. So we're trying to turn visits into conversions. And the report for this in Google Analytics is under the goals section. It's the funnel visualization report. So as a designer, if you see a very high dropout from any step, then you know that there's an issue with that step. And I've seen the smallest changes make the biggest differences. Like if you just remove one problematic field from a form, you can double your conversions, So I definitely recommend setting these up. I've had to edit out some of the information there, but you can actually get exactly where people exited to, the top 5 places people exited to. If it actually comes up exit, then they've left your site. But otherwise, you'll get the URL of the page that they viewed immediately following the last step in the funnel that they achieved. So this is really worth setting up, and the way you do it is you take the URLs of the various steps you're interested in, so reviews, details, and thank you, and you add a goal from your profile settings screen, and you just need to set up those various steps in the goal. So you give your goal a name like purchase. In the case of a funnel like this, you set URL destination as the type of goal. You can also have engagement goals where you just want to measure, do people stay for more than 5 minutes, do people stay for more than 5 pages, but we'll talk about the vast majority of the goals will be URL goals. You're interested in how many people reached a critical step. Again, we use our regular expressions. So the goal URL is /thank you, escape the full stop.jsp $, and then you can add funnel steps as well. So you add the first 2 URLs there as your funnel steps. It's also worth noting you have a goal value here, and you can, if your goal is not a purchase, you can actually put a value on the goal. So if it was downloading a claims form, I could say that's worth £2 every time it happens, and Google Analytics then will keep track of the money aspect of that. Now, there is something that's kind of disappointing about these funnels and the way they work. Apologies for the cheesy slide, I'm not a designer, but when somebody is going through the funnel and they'll do steps 1, 2, 3 and 4, If they were actually to do 1, 3, 4 and 2, it would look the exact same in the funnel. You wouldn't be able to distinguish between that. So when you're looking at your funnel report, just be aware that there is a possibility that they happened in a different order. And the other thing about funnels is, let's say somebody skips a step, so they do 1, 3 and 4. Google Analytics will actually go and fill in step 2 for you, so it'll look like they achieved step 2. So if you put an optional step in your funnel that people can bypass, Google Analytics will backfill that, and you'll end up with deceptive data in your funnel visualization report, because it'll look like they did that step when in fact they didn't. So I would avoid that kind of thing, or if you do it, just be aware that that's the case. So just a second look at the funnel visualization report there. So if somebody did step 1 and step 3, then Google will go back and backfill step 2. So it's fine for a checkout funnel like this. And here's a horrible diagram of what a shop generally looks like. And we've just looked at the lower funnel here, the final few steps that are sequential, and you can be pretty sure that nobody can skip one of those steps. So that's very easy to track in a funnel. What's happening in the upper funnel here with people going back and forward and coming in from different places, the funnel visualization, it's step, step, step. There isn't the option to have diverging and converging steps. So it's difficult to track that, the upper funnel, using the funnel visualization report. And really what I would recommend is setting up lots of 2-step funnels just to see how many people are taking each route. Now, if you start your funnels from the home page, you're obviously going to end up with a very small funnel conversion rate. But if you're starting just at the actual checkout, then you will have a funnel that's more like this shape. Now, I just need to talk a little bit about marketing campaigns, because that's what a lot of people use this for. So you'll have your offline marketing, your online marketing, and that will be broken up into your on-site marketing and your off-site marketing. So the off-site marketing will start with the search engine advertising. So in order to track that and get detailed reports on the keywords, you need a common user ID email address, which is admin access to both your AdWords and your Google Analytics account. And once you have that set up, you log into AdWords with that user ID, and you go to the reporting tab and the Google Analytics drop down there. So, and you get the option to connect up this AdWords account with any Google Analytics account that this email address has admin access to. So you'll see your Google Analytics account in a drop down, and you just connect them up. So that's quite simple. Now, and you get like lots of lovely reports like this. And I mentioned earlier when we were setting up the profiles that you tick the apply cost data box. And if you tick that, then Google Analytics will pull in all the information about the costs of your keywords into Google Analytics, and then you can have return on investment figures calculated automatically for you for your various AdWords campaigns. So that's well worth doing. Now, as regards other search engine advertising, non-Google, and search engine marketing, and your social media and your email campaigns, and your banners on affiliate sites and that kind of thing, you need to tag those marketing campaigns with a special bit of code that looks like this. So I've given 2 examples here. One is a link to our site in Twitter, and the second is a banner ad on our site on boards.ie, which is a kind of a forum in Ireland. So you need to append the 3 query parameters: UTM campaign, UTM medium, and UTM source. So UTM campaign is the name of the campaign. Now, I'd recommend that you try to keep this name common through all of the various channels. So if you're calling a campaign analytics awareness, then you need it to be called that in your email campaigns, in your social media campaigns, and on your banner ads. The medium is social in this case. You can put any naming convention you want in here, but this is what I found the most helpful. And then the source, which is where the ad, etc., appeared. And if you do that and keep your naming convention consistent, then you can, for example, look at the campaigns report in traffic sources, and you'll see how many visits the analytics awareness campaign sent you across all the different mediums. And then you can segment that by medium, and you can get a breakdown of what channel it came through. So the naming convention there is critical. Just a little bit about e-commerce code. If you actually sell stuff on your site, then you need to put this code on the receipt page, the thank you for purchasing page. And obviously, in red here, they are parameters that you pass in. I have actually gotten, this is the code, the actual code off Google Code, and I have gotten phone calls from people saying, how come my e-commerce reports only tell me that I'm selling green medium t-shirts when I don't sell green medium t-shirts? So you have to pass those variables in as parameters, and your developers can help you with that. And then you get access to lots of lovely reports like this on what products were sold and the total revenue and the average order value and all that kind of information. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit about front-end tracking. So if, for example, we have Vodafone kindly let me use this example, their client, and this is their phone gallery, and I've edited this, but in reality there are 200 and something phones in the phone gallery. So we all think that choice is a positive thing, because our rational brains here at the front tell us choice is a positive thing, but our emotional brains and our caveman brains actually don't like choice really that much at all. It's like going into a supermarket and seeing this kind of thing. And they've actually shown that if you restrict choice, you will sell more. And there's research going back to the 70s to support that. And I think we all kind of intuitively understand that if you go to a gallery and you're totally overwhelmed, you're less likely to buy. So Vodafone offer a little feature selector like this, where you can select the various features that you want your phone to have. And we can track what people are putting into this feature selector just by putting a little bit of code onto each of these checkboxes. And the code looks like this. It's an on-click event on the checkbox. And basically, page tracker _ track page view is on every page of your website. It's part of the tracking code. And ordinarily, that just grabs what's in the URL and sends it to Google Analytics. But in this case, we're not grabbing what's in the URL. We're going to pass it a parameter, and what we pass is virtual, because it's a virtual page view is what we call it, and I like to prefix them all with virtual because then I can write a filter and eliminate all of them and keep a profile with a clean number of page views. And it's a virtual page view triggered from the phone gallery. It's the feature selector, and then feature minus the name of the feature clicked, so that would be Wi-Fi or 3G or FM radio. And then these show up in your top content report, just like any other page view. And what I've kind of obscured here is the names of the various features, and we have unique page views here, which is basically the number of visits that they were clicked in, and I've selected a pie chart view here. So what I can tell is, I won't say which is which, but one of these segments is Wi-Fi, so you know which features are important to your visitors. That's kind of interesting, but the real interesting way to look at this is trended over time, and is Wi-Fi getting more popular or less popular? So for that, I could set up a goal for use of the feature selector in general. How many visits was it used in, and that'll help me do a return on investment analysis on the feature selector. Or I can set up individual goals for each of the features and trend that over time. But what that genuinely reflects is how much the site was visited. So if the site is visited a lot around Christmas, you'll see a feature being selected a lot. So you need to kind of do a bit more work in order for this to be really informative. So what I need to do is compare how often a feature is selected as a percentage of the views of the phone gallery, and then that will eliminate trends that are just there because of Christmas and things like that. So I filter top content for the gallery page, and I select the weekly data points here, and then I export that to Excel. And then similarly, I do the same for whatever feature I'm interested in, and select weekly data points and export it to Excel. And then you tidy things up a little bit, and I've mocked up this data, but basically you'll get every week how many visits there was to the gallery and how many times feature 1 was clicked. And then you can get a percentage of visits to the phone gallery that included that feature. And when you trend that over time, that's actually much more informative. So I can see that this Wi-Fi in the mock-up is getting more popular. Just one more thing you can do with that data is you can create an advanced segment. Now, if I want to do an ROI for the feature selector, you can see how many visits it was selected in, but really the interesting thing is, do you sell more in visits that the feature selector is used in? So you create what's called an advanced segment, and here you can just drag and drop. There's various dimensions here in the nav, and you can just drag and drop. So what I'm going to drag over is the page matches the regular expression, whatever feature I'm talking about, and there was a sale in the product category. So in this case, there was a phone sale. And then I can do a little bit more work, and I end up with a graph like this. And if we just look at the green bars for starters, I can see that, okay, feature 1, in visits that was selected, there wasn't a lot of sales. In visits where feature 7 was selected, there was a lot of sales. So what that tells me is you need to go look at your product selection for feature 1, because you're obviously not converting that traffic. Now, just these aren't clients. I just wanted to give you another few examples just to embed that. People looking for sofas on Argos, so you've got the various colours of sofas and the various fabrics, so you can put on-click events onto these, and maybe you might find out that you don't have enough green sofas. The London Business School, I just wanted to illustrate that this isn't just for e-commerce sites, so you can select what kind of program you're interested in, and if you do an advanced segment for the virtual page view on entrepreneurship and contact us page, then you can create a similar graph and figure out what programs aren't converting, and then work on rewriting that content. Amazon, the reviews here are an interesting thing to track. Obviously, if you put virtual page views on reviews, it's the ones with the highest reviews that will convert the most. But I just wanted to let you know from measuring sites how powerful these are. If you implement reviews, you will find that's the conversion rate a week following reviews compared to a week before, and it's up 41%. So they're extremely powerful, and the reason they're powerful is because we are hardwired to copy what other people do. Our rational brains think we like to be independent thinkers, but in reality, that's how we learn as kids, how to talk, how to do everything. We look at other people. So when we see reviews, it's a very powerful thing. So we're all the same, really, and we copy what other people do. Even when we rebel, we generally rebel in some kind of conformist way. And just another thing about reviews, you'll notice that when you implement reviews, there's a danger that your average order value will fall, because people see, oh, it's actually okay to buy the cheaper item because it's gotten 5 stars. So that's something you need to keep an eye out on if you're putting reviews onto the site. And what I would say is, if you have a review on a product, try to do an upsell beside it. So a review on have a product beside it that's more profitable for you and has a higher review, and that should counteract any issues with your average order value. Okay, just the last things, I left out a few aspects of the marketing campaigns tracking. So on-site marketing, you can track using virtual page views. So if you want to track how a promotion on your homepage is doing, just put a virtual page view on it. I'd suggest you use the same naming convention like analytics awareness for that campaign, and it'll make it easy to do the analysis then. Television and that kind of thing, it's difficult. Basically, the best you can do is put a distinct URL into your, let's say, magazine ad, and then anyone who comes in on that URL has probably come from the magazine ad. But there are all kinds of tricks around that. Really, they're only tricks. So just a few things to remember. Agree clear measurable goals. Set up Google Analytics. Set up a profile for your target audience. Set up some goals and funnels. Review the points of exit from the funnel. Set up e-commerce tracking if it's relevant. Implement front-end tracking to reveal insight. Create some advanced segments around that front-end tracking, or around anything really. They're very worthwhile because you really need to segment up the data. As long as you're looking at all visits on every part of the site, it'll be very difficult to find anything interesting, because different segments are doing interesting things, and they'll all be masked when you're looking at data that describes everything. Investigate the conversion rate of various segments, and then rework your content for the segments that aren't working. Tag your marketing campaigns, Track return on investment of everything. Don't spend any money unless you know that it's going to make you money. And if you find out it doesn't make you money, that's okay. That's the scientific process. You learn from that. So long as you've measured it and you understand then that hasn't worked for me, that's fine. And just basically become more data-driven, embed the processes and the structures around that. It's the kind of thing that has to come from the top. I've been a web analyst at the bottom trying to put these processes in place, and it's really not easy. It has to come from the top down. The top has to demand, we need data behind this, we need business cases, we need post-investment analysis. Credit to two people, Avnish Kaushik, Web Analytics 2.0, serious book about web analytics, and Neuro Web Design, which I only discovered recently, Susan Weinschenk. I've never met her, but her book is small and quite good. And that's me. If you have any questions, I'll take questions. Or I'm around for the day. I'll leave a few cards here.